Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Laura Hernandez, Marketing Manager at Nailed, and I'll be the moderator in today's session. I'll be accompanying our great people and culture experts, Enrique Rubio, Perry James, and Sophie Hughes. And this webinar's length is about an hour. It's one of our speakers will speak for around 10 to 12 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A slot. We would love to hear from you. So if you click the Ask a Question button below, you will be able to ask whatever you want to our speakers. Please specify at the beginning of the question to whom you are delivering the question, so it will be easier for the speakers to answer them. You can also interact with us and the other attendees in the webinar chat that you have on the right-hand side of the screen. And you can add comments or share your perceptions or ideas. And also remember that we have a poll. You can see it below. And so we are about to start. For those of you who just joined, welcome. I'm going to invite now our first speaker, who is Enrique Rubio. Enrique is a human resources and future of work expert, keynote speaker, founder of Hacking HR, and one of the top 100 HR influencers globally. He will be talking about the future of employee experience in the remote workplace. Hello, Enrique. How are you?
Good morning, or well, good afternoon for you. It's morning for me. Hello, everybody. Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for inviting me.
The stage is yours now, Enrique.
Thank you. And hello, everybody. Wherever you are in the world, I'm not sure that you're all connecting from the same country or city. So it's to be spending a few minutes with you today to talk a little bit about employee experience, or in the broader sense, what I call human experience at work. And of course, within that, all that pertains to the world of employee recognition. But I want to begin by setting up the stage and just making sure that we bring and continue bringing the conversation of the new approaches to work to the table. We know that because of the pandemic, a lot of the things that people like myself thought were going to happen in years from now were accelerated and basically compressed in a few months. And one of those things is precisely this idea of remote work, as we see a transition to a workplace that utilizes more technological tools to do the work. One of the forecasts that many people had was eventually the way people are working will look differently. People will maybe have more flexibility to work from home or to work remotely, wherever they want to work from. And all of those trends were supposed to take some time to happen. And as we know, because of the pandemic, they happened really, really fast for most companies and most industries in the world. So I'm bringing this up to the table because we cannot talk about employee experience, human experience, or employee recognition if we don't begin by understanding the fact that the ways people are working today are different. Some people are working remotely, fully remote. Some people are going to go back to the office either because they want to go back to the office, and I know some of them that they are eager to be back in an office, or because of the quality and the nature of the work that they do requires them to be in an office, or because their workplaces, hopefully, with a real case for that to happen, will bring them back to work. And of course, we're going to see some in between. I don't want to call it something in the middle. I don't think it's going to be necessarily asking people to come 2 days to the office and 2 days to work from home. I think it's going to be whatever works for the company and the people, and it's going to be more of a hybrid approach. Now, these new ways of working that were accelerated by the pandemic, and hopefully all of those forms of working will not go away, but instead we will continue to embrace flexibility in the workplace as the new norm in the way we work. Now, thinking about this will put, of course, gigantic amount of pressure in the way we architect corporate culture. I'm not sure that all of you work in human resources. Maybe some of you do. Some of you are perhaps leading your businesses. But the reality is that For first of all, before the pandemic, for a long time, we were already having issues with corporate culture. That's why in most research and most surveys, you would find that people would respond to the question, are you engaged at work? And they would say no in the majority of the cases. In the United States, it was something along the lines of, one half of the workforce disengaged. Worldwide, it was around 3/4 of the workforce being disengaged from work and the work that they were doing. So even before the pandemic, we had corporate culture challenges that we needed to tackle. A lot of those challenges, unfortunately, were being perhaps addressed with more superficial sort of solutions that didn't really address some of the problems that we were dealing with. And employee experience, human experience, and recognition is one of those foundational elements that we need to work with, but that many companies trying to resolve the challenges in these areas were simply just finding very superficial kind of solutions. So because we were dragging some of those challenges in corporate culture from before, now they are, of course, amplified by COVID, because we now have all the challenges that we were dealing with before, with the added layer of the new challenge, which is how do we architect, how do we build a corporate culture that is inclusive for those that are going to be working in the office, that is inclusive to those that are going to be working from home, or those that are going to be working in a hybrid approach. So the first key takeaway that I want you to walk away with today is that we need to think differently about workplace culture, and we need to think differently about employee experience. And, by default, of course, we need to think differently about employee recognition, because the way we were doing this before does not apply to the new ways of working today. Even if some companies decided to bring everybody back to the office, even for those companies, the challenges around corporate culture will continue to be very, very powerful, because not only because people want more flexibility at work, but even because working from an office will now require different ways of leadership, different ways of collaboration, different ways of, even doing the work that we need to do. So key takeaway number one is for you to think that because we have challenges and we have to re-architect corporate culture to address the new ways of working, that entails that we need to think differently about employee experience, about human experience, and about employee recognition. I do not want to be prescriptive here, because I know there are many nuances to the way each company is working, the way each country works. I mean, some of you may be in Spain, some of you may be in the United States, and the ways our countries work are, very different from each other. And there are nuances and realities that you need to take into account. But the bottom line here is to think differently about employee experience, human experience, and recognition. Now, the second element, besides working and re-architecting corporate culture, is how we measure the work and the performance of our people. And this, to me, is a key element that we're going to have to dedicate a lot of time to going forward. Traditionally, and even though there is science of human performance, and there is science and data that can tell us whether people are being productive and whether they are delivering the work that they need to deliver, for some reason, and I think the reason perhaps is because we're dragging a lot of thinking from the industrial era that already died, and we continue to be buried down, hopefully, sooner rather than later. We are dragging this concept that those that are actually doing the work and those that are actually being productive at work are those that are in the office. Now, if you are a leader who thinks those that are coming to the office are the ones that are delivering the work and are the ones that are engaged at work, and actually the CEO of one large co-working space recently said, those who want to work from home are not engaged. Only those who come to the office are engaged, which is ridiculous to say the least. And there is science showing that is not true. But the reality is that many leaders think in that way. So one element that is going to be very powerful in the conversation about redesigning and developing recognition programs and re-architecting culture to address the new challenges in human experience and employee experience is the metrics that determine whether the people that are working for our organizations are being successful or not. I'm going to say that again. The second element, the second key takeaway that I want you to walk away with is that we need to think differently about the metrics that determine whether those that are working for us are succeeding or not. If in the past, that metrics of success, which one author in the book, Eric Ries, in the book Lean Startup, called vanity metrics. The vanity metric is thinking people are productive and people are delivering their work if they come to the office. That is a vanity metric because, first of all, it's not true. And second, it doesn't tell you anything about the quality and the performance of the work that people are actually doing. So we need to think differently, and we need to design new metrics that help us determine whether somebody is being successful in the work that they are doing, either if they are in the office or if they are working from home or if they are working from the beach or from the mountain or from the moon, or if they come 2 days to the office and they decide to work the other 3 days from home. So we need to think differently about the metrics of success that we are using to determine people's success and people's performance. The last element, and I know I had just a little bit of time to share these three elements with you. Number one, as I said before, re-architecting corporate culture to address the new challenges in employee experience and human experience, knowing that we are engaged in new ways of working. Number two, it is redesigning, and this is part, of course, of re-architecting corporate culture, redesigning the metrics of success or the metrics that determine whether people are succeeding and delivering the work that they need to do, and using metrics that are real and powerful. And not only do we have to redesign the metrics, we also have to redesign the way we assess those metrics. It's not enough anymore for the boss to see somebody working in the office and saying that person is delivering the work just because they are there. This has never been true, let alone now, based on all the experience that we've had over the past 14 months, most of us working remotely because of the pandemic. And the third key takeaway, and this one is very much related to employee recognition, is the following. As we rethink about our corporate culture and we re-architect corporate culture, and as we rethink about the metrics of success, we need to make sure that the principles and values that are guiding the work that we do in our organizations continue to be fairness and transparency. And this is going to be very, very important. One of the most, based on my conversations with so many people and so many HR leaders discussing about this hybrid workplace sort of approach, one of the main concerns that they have and that employees have is the following. How am I going to collaborate with others if the collaboration tools or approach that we used to use in the past was just hanging out with people in the office? How am I going to do that if I'm working from home? Moreover, it seems that because the metric of success for work was when people was working from the office, I am afraid that if I work from home, I'm going to be passed over for a promotion or for a new project or for a new job and whatnot. So we need to make sure that as we are architecting a new corporate culture and as we are thinking differently about metrics of success, we're also being fair and transparent in the decisions that we're making, because people will notice. People are not stupid. They noticed before when office politics came in the way to make fair and transparent decisions. They will notice even more now if they decide to work from home. So all of these elements create, I think, a very powerful, but I would say also very interesting challenge for HR professionals and for business leaders to rethink and redesign their approach to human experience, employee experience, and in this case, to develop new ways for employee recognition at work. So I'm hoping that these three main key takeaways, I'm not giving you necessarily one solution or prescribing the medicine for you to solve these problems, but I'm hoping that these three takeaways help you awake your curiosity to find the answers on how to do it for your specific reality, for your specific workplace, industry, country, and whatnot. So thank you so much, everybody. I think I'm right on time. Laura, I hope I didn't use more of the time that I needed to use.
No, it was great. Thank you so much for your presentation, Enrique. It was very interesting to understand how the pandemic has changed the way we see the future of work and employee experience. And definitely we need to start thinking differently.
Yeah. And, every now and then in the history of humanity, there are changes that come because we're curious and we want to explore and we say, hey, I want to go there. Let me see what's there. And we start the journey to go there. And some other times something pushes us to go there. And in this case, a lot of the changes that we are experiencing in a very compressed period of time are because the pandemic pushed us to explore new ways of working. We knew that some of these things were going to happen eventually, but the pandemic, without a doubt, accelerated a different thinking for work, the workplace, and the workforce. So I'm hoping that everybody, really takes this into account.
Yes, thank you so much, Enrique. And just to remind to the audience that you have any question to Enrique, you can ask it in the button below, ask a question. And so at the end of all presentations, we can give an answer to those. Thank you, Enrique.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to invite our second speaker, Perry Teams. Okay, so Perry is the founder and chief energy officer at People and Transformational HR, an international and TED Talk speaker, and award-winning writer on the future of work, human resources and learning. He has named his presentation Recognition and Underutilized Force for Change. Hi, Perry. How are you?
Hi, Laura. I'm really good. Thank you very much. And thank you, Enrique, for a fantastic start. He's known as the HR hacker for good reason.
Exactly. So now the stage is yours, Perry.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I will link to Enrique's presentation. So thank you really for giving us a real good scene setter. So I think what we are starting to look at now is that future of work acceleration that Enrique talked about. But some things stay the same. Some things are constant and we hold on to them for good reason. And recognition is exactly one of those things we need to hold on to. If anything, the dynamic of it has changed because we are now talking about recognition that we can't do all the time in close proximity to other people. We can't high five through a screen. And even the act of rewarding people with gifts is somewhat diluted by the fact that we're dispersed. So if we do return to some proximity-based working, then clearly some of that can happen. But we need to, again, as Enrique said, re-architect not just culture, but I think the way we look at recognition. Recognition is really important to us. We are beasts who are thriving in certain situations, and sometimes we just need some validation and acceptance that what we did make a difference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about this complexity and try and bring us into some form of stability, because as I said, some things stay the same. So I am going to share a slide, and this is a model that I've constructed that has employee experience at the heart of it, but also organization performance. Enrique is super in helping us understand things like metrics that are really important to us to help us understand what success is all about. But I think there's only one metric that matters, and you can see it on the screen here towards the far right side, flourishing. The only metric that matters to an organization and to people is, are the people and the organization flourishing? Normally, what would be great is that both aspects are flourishing as a result of each other, so that the organization flourishes. That means it's profitable, or it manages its budget, it hits its purpose, its vision and values are manifest in everything it does. And people feel valued and recognized, and that they add and make a difference and achieve a state of flourishing. So that's the whole point, really, of working experience. Now, I've called this model 42 at work. If you know your British literary history, there was a book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. And in it, the question was asked, what is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything? And a quest throughout the book tried to find the answer. Essentially, the galaxy was a big computer, and the answer came out as a very unspectacular 42. because there really isn't one answer to what the meaning of life, the universe, and everything is. So it was almost a little parody on what that response is. But I wanted to create this model so that it became the answer to work, people, and everything. So we know flourishing is the metric and the outcome for both the organization and the people. And this model helps us understand where recognition sits. And you'll see it. It's right in the center. It is a huge part of the components that lead to people feeling like they're flourishing and that the organization itself flourishes. If we look at the top and the bottom of this model, you'll see that we have systems of work. This is what Enrique was talking about with the processes and the culture and all of the combination of things that make work work. And it's underpinned, though, by human energy, because what we are giving, I guess, to our employers and to our colleagues, ultimately for our customers and our partners and our suppliers and so on, is our human energy, whether that's intellectual energy, whether it's physical energy, but we are giving energy in return for recognition and reward that links to the working systems that help us do that. Now, this model is deliberately crafted with a view to us finding out how do we get to a state of flourishing if we're not there already. And clearly recognition is a big part of it. So if we survey people, if we understand the sentiment and the feeling of how people are about recognition, if people are saying, I don't feel I'm recognized in the right way, that could be because in a remote working sense, they never get the chance to validate and assess and measure their work against their colleagues and with the sort of knock-on effect of people further down the work process chain. So we can start to use that as a diagnostic point. We'll say that if recognition isn't working as well as it could and people feel under-recognized, they won't feel fulfilled. They may not believe that we, the employer, care about them, or their colleagues and their managers care about them as much. And maybe their well-being is slightly impaired by the fact that they don't have this sense of achievement, accomplishment, and recognition. So we think that's where it's misfiring. They won't be flourishing if recognition doesn't work. So how do we put that right? In this model, we go back to the left side, as you can see on screen. And it could be that the recognition side of things isn't being felt strongly enough by employees because the accountability they have is either not necessarily very clear, it's not articulate, they feel perhaps like they want to make more decisions, but they have bureaucracy and the systems get in the way. They can't make decisions to help a customer without having to go through lengthy chains of command. So sometimes that really impairs how people feel in terms of recognition. Or they might step out and take a risk. So they go and do something that's perhaps considered to be a little bit off the sort of normal track. And therefore that might then result in some form of punishment or some form of a telling off. And really the accountability side of things clearly isn't that strongly articulated by that individual. So it needs clarity. So in order for people to feel recognized, they need clarity. And the way we sometimes do this in the world of work now is we say, here are some key performance indicators. Here are some objectives and key responsibilities. Here are some metrics. Here are some expectations. Here are some success criteria. And we think that's helping to create clarity. But the real test for those is, do they make a difference to that individual? Are they sparked into action? Are they held in an assured and comfortable way about delivering if we've got clear objectives, clear goals, clear mandates, clear sense of what we're there to do? And if that's not in place, recognition is very much likely to suffer. The other form that I think links to recognition is a sense of togetherness. Lots of people have said to me in the past of their working experiences, they are not the sort of people motivated by Employee of the Month awards or star recognitions, but actually they really like to work together with other people and have that group of people be recognized and share the success and celebrate an achievement on a group basis. I know work has been sort of atomized into individual job descriptions, and that's been the machine-like way that Enrique was talking about for quite some time. But what that's done is that's driven a culture of competition. That's driven a culture of people almost being uncollaborative and uncooperative because they want to get their results personally to the top of the league table to earn some kind of recognition bonus. but at the cost of collegiality and collaboration and support and help, to the point that sometimes people don't deliberately share and mentor and guide colleagues because it takes too much time away from them achieving their personal targets. But then that's impairing somebody's development and pathway to success and competence, and actually doesn't build a spirit of togetherness. And if you know anything about dynamics of human psychology, then I think what we are really talking about here is that human psychology is aggregated and amplified with a sense of togetherness. Teams that stick together win together. Simon Sinek is terrific in some of his storytelling about high-achieving military personnel. They will all go into dangerous situations to rescue a wounded combat colleague. And when asked, why did you put yourself in danger when somebody else was clearly in a wounded position, and you could have died by rescuing them? And their response is, because they would have done that for me. So you've got this sense of togetherness. Now, if you've got togetherness, it really helps you with recognition, peer-to-peer recognition in a remote working situation or in a collective proximity, office-based or factory-based or warehouse-based element is as powerful as it is when it comes from a line manager. If your peers recognize you, if your peers celebrate you succeeding and that you're achieving great things, that's as powerful to us as it is from a line manager or somebody else who can sign a bonus. Now, if we look at accountability, clarity, and togetherness, if we know they need fixing, we may be able to fix it at that point, but we may need something a little bit bigger. And this comes again to what Enrique was saying earlier on. We have to look at the design of work, the design of systems, the design even of our expectations. And that can also be held very strongly by a set of principles that support our values, principles that are exemplars of our culture. Those are the places where we might have to start thinking about something new to build and create that enhances the sense of accountability, clarity, and togetherness in order to realize some much more naturally occurring, meaningful senses of recognition that lead to fulfillment, care, well-being, and ultimately flourishing. But I don't want to ignore the left side of this model, because when we are thinking about recognition, often it comes back to two questions. What is the value that I'm creating for the organization? Doesn't necessarily have to be financial. It could be reputational, it could be social, it could even be natural. You could save energy and create a lower carbon footprint for your employer. So what value can I create for the organization? Does the organization expect me to create? But then also, I think that links back to, what do we value individually in life? Are we generous? Are we supportive? Are we kind? Are we considered? If we value those things, we want to also experience them through our working world. But if the organization drives us to this solo act of competitive culture, we may be able to achieve good results, but our inner value set is probably compromised. We probably don't feel like we're flourishing, even if we're a high worth, high earning individual on an accelerated career path. We may still think, my values are not really at show in the work I do. So the reason for being, the meaning for individuals, the meaning for the organization, I think these have as much a part to play in a remote situation, in the hybrid situation that Enrique was talking about, or in a purely office-based, factory-based, depot-based environment. Meaning for the individual, meaning for the organization come together, and then through design, through principles, accountability, clarity, and togetherness, we can look at not just recognition, but development that we have access to and that helps us be stronger, more capable, more confident, more adaptable. We can think about the influence we might be able to have to change things around us for the better. And ultimately, again, as Enrique said about culture, how do we include people who are different, who are not from a particular privileged background, who have challenges in their life, but they need to bring some of that energy into the workplace and ultimately get fulfilled, feel like people care about what you do and you care about it, and that you feel a sense of wellness through your work rather than stress and anxiety. Because what we all need is that sense of flourishing, that one metric that I think rules it all. I'll stop screen now and see if there's anything that we've got in the chat. But also, just to give you a sense of something, I don't think recognition is something that's going to go away in a hurry. I think, if anything, we need to think differently, again, as Enrique said, differently about how people receive recognition, how people feel valued, how people feel they contribute, wherever they are, whoever they're with. So I think we've got a really strong chance to do what Enrique said, which is accelerate the future and modernize recognition, make it habitual, make it powerful, make it representative of the value that people create. And with that, I think I'm sort of done on time. I'll invite Laura back in and just see if there's anything you'd like to share. Laura, thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Perry. I take a lot from it, but mainly that to succeed in recognition and organizational transformation, we must take a close look at flourishing as a metric and the outcome as well. So as I said before, I'll invite you again on screen at the end of Sophie's presentation, who is the next one, for the Q&A slot. Thank you, Perry.
Thank you.
So I'm inviting now Sophie Hughes. You give me just a minute. Okay, so Sophie is HR business manager at Rentals United, and she defines herself as an HR generalist and forever people's enthusiast. She will deliver a presentation called Recognition Comes in Many Shapes and Sizes. Hi, Sophie, how are you? Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Laura.
So, Sophie, ready when you are.
Great. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you once again for involving me in this webinar. This is my first one, so to follow behind two very experienced HR leaders, it's a major privilege. So again, also thanks to my fellow panelists, Enrique and Perry, for your insights. My notebook is filled and I have so many questions for you. So I look forward to discussing this topic further. I mean, you've just hit it on the head, Perry, there, saying that the topic of recognition is not going to go away anytime soon. So just yes, to introduce myself, I'm Sophie Hughes and I'm the HR business manager of a small SaaS company called Rentals United. We're a channel manager platform in the vacation rental sector. So I can hear your thoughts. Obviously, apart from 2020 being tough on everyone, our industry was hit very, very hard, of course. But we've certainly pulled through, that's for sure. With our main objective on our people side was to keep a strong team, support them, and get through it together, all together in this strange time. So also I'd like to give, a big thanks to my incredible team spread across the world, and, never failing to give their best and support and guidance to our clients, but more so internally for the RU community. We wouldn't have succeeded without them. So, what I'd like to focus on today, and yes, it's very much, recognition does come in many shapes and sizes, but it's not a one size fits all. And I'd like to look at our experience, especially being a small tech company that got pushed into remote working directly really hard in Barcelona. Of course, we're looking at a time where we were finding ourselves even pre, during, and post this pandemic situation. We were finding that we were always needing to delve a little bit deeper into the metrics, especially the ones provided by our native service. And, we were really getting boggled our heads away with the ratings and the variation of ratings coming from and within different departments, especially regarding recognition. We further questioned, why is this metric so unsteady to understand when, we have a great community environment? We encourage our managers, our team leads, our team members across the board to, celebrate when a job is done well, a project has launched, or, we highlight team efforts as a company. It's not just on an individual basis. Sharing those client start reviews and, obviously celebrating when a contract has been signed. And it all came down to this, and I think you both have mentioned this, is, were we asking the right question? How can we engage more of a variety of team members when we're looking at recognition. So, overall, with a little bit more of investigation, and I think it just came down to a simple approach and the most valuable one of that, which is, it starts with human interaction and a simple conversation. Simply asking, what does recognition mean to you? Of course, the first thing that was highlighted was, recognition was identifying knowledge or success story or this job well done. And, coming from an education and teaching background, this is all too familiar with this idea of recognition only being used as a type of reward. And this is what we were looking at, that Perry's also mentioned as well. But, those with 100% attendance were recognized by receiving a gold star or, receiving an award for an art competition on the stage. But at the end of the day, everyone's challenge is different, and that obviously in a team, and the skill set and the profile is unique to suit. So it's really having to balance that there. So it made me think, what about the other 300 students, or, in our case, our employees, and their day-to-day commitment to a company. And this, again, I think we're all very aligned to what we've been speaking today. And this is where culture plays a big part, a big role. So having that solid company culture is having a community that strives for the common goal, right? And, common goal in mind. And of course, it's remembering that communities are formed by a variety of people. So then when we're looking again at recognition and asking that question, what is it that the individual needs and what motivates them, which is only going to positively affect their communication with others, the productivity in the day-to-day, their growth within the company, and that strengthened commitment overall to the common goal. And that's when it's not just on the shoulders of those winning the gold stars at the end of the day. So then when it comes down to looking at recognition on a more sincere note, viewing recognition as acknowledging the individual. How is each person doing on a more personalized level? And, on a more human level. That, we're from human resources, right? It's in our name, it's in our branding. How are these individuals doing, and how is their day to day? So obviously now having ENPS metrics and now giving us the data to highlight maybe which teams and departments we should really be focusing on. Yes, still at the same time, it's really important to celebrate and give merit where merit is due on a project or a job well done. But, it's also important to invest time on a personal level with employees, not just for performance reviews or task checks for the daily running, but more importantly, a really genuine, hi, how are you, and acknowledging our fellow colleagues. So, looking at recognition and acknowledgement to give validation to individuals on that level, on a more human level, also, of course, improves engagement. And why? So, looking back at 2020, and especially here in Barcelona, I know around the world, everyone's had this very strange, unique experience. We were locked down very, very tightly. We were not allowed to leave. And we started to reach out from the HR department. We were 2 at the time. And, as an extra source of human support, let's call it, for our team members, so across the board. Because everyone was experiencing a unique challenge. So whether it was via calls or Zooms or messaging or, really adapting to each type of person as well, we increasingly saw how this type of recognition in the form of pure acknowledgement, from someone that was not their direct manager, it wasn't from their direct team. This became something extremely valuable for all involved. We weren't there to discuss ETAs. We weren't there to discuss chat about performance. It was more similar. We can say it was very stressful in that environment, but it was more similar to an interaction that would 100% be spontaneous and natural in an office environment. So, of course, it was strange at the beginning, but it's getting used to it. And it's adapting. And it's very much one of the main verbs that we need to have in mind in this remote or hybrid. And supporting.
Hi, Sophie. I think you're having problems because we cannot listen to you. Can you hear me, Sophie? Yes? Why don't you try to take your headphones off? Don't worry, Sophie. We are sorry for the inconvenience. There must be a problem with all the connection or something. I will try to remove Sophie from screen and I will invite you again. Okay, Sophie?
Hello. This is a classic moment of, remote working and working online.
Exactly.
We've got to laugh about it.
So you can carry on, Sophie.
I'm not quite sure where I got cut off, but, it's really what we were looking at. I'm just trying to think where we were, but it's really, looking at what we were doing in 2020 and really reaching out as a HR team, giving that extra human support, like we were calling it. We were just people acknowledging and supporting our fellow people. And we also saw that, this positive reflection on engagement rates across the whole company. So then we started to go, bing, 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 what's going on? Was this happening pre remote working, or is this something new? And we really started to see alignment. We always see these Gallup surveys that say only 15% of employees are engaged in a workplace, and then it was making me think, oh wow, we're in this remote setup. How is this affecting us? So, as people's teams, we're constantly striving to keep building these strong, engaged communities. And, however, it's true that remote work has really made it a little bit more challenging for us, where, more on that more humanistic approach is that we're seeing employees can feel less part of their team, their commitment less recognized, which on a personal level results in employees feeling lonely and isolated. When it's just you, your computer, and the tasks that you need to do when you're working from home, it's just you and the screen. So yes, of course, you can speak to those on a joint project with you or have a call in or call out, but it's exactly what my fellow panelists were talking about before, is that office culture is no longer there. And also it's very interesting to look at performance on that side. So how often do you actually go and chat to a colleague in the office? That we need to find that balance. So, what can we do on our people's team side? We asked ourselves to reduce this feeling of isolation and improve a feeling of, positive recognition on an acknowledgement stance and adapting it to the individual in our teams, as of course we work with a variety of humans. So, we're looking at, the Society of Human Resource Management say peer-to-peer recognition is 36% more likely to have a positive impact financially in a company rather than on a manager recognition level only. And obviously I think this was I think also Enrique pointed on that as well. It's not just on managers or team leaders' shoulders. It's about creating an ethos of engagement and shared recognition across the board. So, as people's teams as well, we invest in people. I think there's no other way more meaningful than improved human interaction, even if it is via video chat and we get cut off and we have sound issues. We have to laugh about it, and we have to, again, adapt to this way of working. But we also have to share that and share those errors and share those problems that happen. So now it's more of a combination of, looking at recognition and well-being, as well as Perry was mentioning, and this gesture of recognition, reaching out more on a human level. We get so much more in return. It's, really acknowledging how our employees are doing, how they really are doing, asking them their opinions. And, it really gives us a real view of what's going on in teams, in departments, in the culture and the community as a whole from their point of view, when maybe there's not an opportunity to fully be heard at this point beforehand. So, and then what can we put in place, actually, using these points of contacts and really engaging with our employees on that level more personally? How can we really align this with company goals and actually what company can provide as well in return? So we've actually returned to this idea based on what we were doing last year of a more making sure everyone was okay and checking in and, in this tough, challenging time. We've reintroduced a series of check-ins. So from the people's team, it's not from a manager doing one-to-ones or a performance review or a HR review. It's not that. It's casual. It's with a cup of tea, if they want. And the option is just to chat, catch up, and focus on development opportunities as well. So really bringing that back in on a more gradual level if they need our support there. So really looking at how is the individual, are they how are they doing independently, and how are they doing within our community? And it's really looking at that community as well. Are they keeping connected in a remote setup? Is it for them? Maybe not. It's really adapting to the individual. There's possibly a colleague out there that has so much in common and they didn't know, and through these chats we're actually starting to connect people and create other groups. So this is where we're looking at how it's actually having a really positive effect on our community building. So it's less spotlight and more of a community-focused recognition. So, looking at our insight and knowledge sharing groups, our social meets, really engaged with the interests of the individual, and really a bit more interactive. Those afterworks as well, they're very important. And of course, on a day-to-day, we are really engaging using tools like Slack to post interactive games or activities or culture shares, because we're global. We've got colleagues all over the world, so there's a lot to share and a lot to learn. So to conclude from my side, I think it's all about keeping it simple. Recognition plays a big role in all our lives as human beings, as we've seen from all of us speaking here. But I believe that interaction is key, and really focus on interaction on a personal and on a very quality level with our employees, especially further adapting into this remote work setup, whether it be hybrid or at the office. We're definitely lucky that there's more focus from the HR community, and especially a lot more sharing going on. So very, very happy that I've been involved today, and I've learned a lot, and I'm really intrigued to see what everyone has to say.
Thank you so much, Sophie, for the presentation. I completely agree with you on the statement that since the pandemic started, we have to dive a little bit deeper into metrics. These metrics will help us understand if employees feel recognized, satisfied, and engaged. So I will invite now Perry. Enrique had to go. Oh, are you not listening?
No, now I can. Yeah.
Can you listen to me, Sophie?
Yes, now yeah.
Okay, great. So I will invite now Perry to join us for the Q&A slot. Sadly, Enrique had to leave because he had another meeting, but he told me that you can write him an email if you have any question. It's enrique@hackinghr.io. I will write it on the chat as well, so you can keep it there. So I'm going to invite Perry now. Oh, there's a loop in the audio, right?
Yeah, we've got a big.
Hi there, Perry.
Hi, Sophie. Well done. I don't know whether if we turn your volume down, that might help the echo.
Is it still echoing?
No, not now.
Okay.
All the time.
Sharing tips. That's what we like.
Oh, you're on mute, Laura. That's better, I think. No, still can't hear you. I think I'm the only one people can hear. Yep. Well, while Laura's reconnecting, Sophie, well done for the recovery. We've got some questions.
There was a moment that actually, because these are very new and I've not really used them before, and I thought, well, you know, they've been working well this week doing calls, and of course, typical, it happens when you're in this scenario.
Can you listen to me now?
We can now.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm having problems with connection. I'm so sorry all. So we can start the Q&A slot if you're ready.
For sure.
Okay, great. So we have a first question for Perry. So how the leader can offer intent and not make decisions for their subordinates?
Right. Yeah, very important point, I think, here. So I think what we've seen in the initial response to the pandemic is that because there was a very chaotic and, dare I say it, crisis situation, leaders went into very decisive modes. And I think actually a lot of us recognised that was the right thing to do. So Sophie and her team would say, right, this is what we're doing, and we followed those instructions. Then I think it got to a point where we didn't need that anymore because we needed to work it out for ourselves. Now, companies, I think, acted in two ways. Leaders continued to provide probably a little bit too much intentional direction and decision making, and others recognised the best thing to do for all the individualised factors we heard earlier on, to allow people to emerge into their own decisions and frames and models and approaches. And I think in the way that Sophie was talking about, really, which is that you start to get people feeling more comfortable with the situation so they can make their own decisions. So I think you've got a grip that needs to be looser. So I think leaders have a chance to work with their teams to say, actually, why don't you help me make decisions? And where you feel you're competent and comfortable to make decisions and you don't need me, then you've got my trust and I'll provide the cover and I'll support and I'll endorse. So I think there's a conversation of that nature. I think it's not about losing control. I think it's about dispersing accountability. That's how I would describe it. And I think as a leader, if you ask that question, I think your teams will say, well, I need this much bandwidth, but then the other stuff I need from you higher up, I'll come to you. I'll let you know when I need it. So I think we sort of flip the dynamic a bit. We make it more collaborative than we do directional. That's how I'd describe it. If leaders aren't willing to let go and not control, then I think you need to have a sterner conversation saying, why are you doing that? What's that delivering? And the consequence of continuing to do that is harder work for the leader, and it kind of stifles people's willingness to participate in imaginative ways. So I think they're losing value. That's how I'd frame it.
Thank you so much for your answer, Perry. I hope Marcos found what he was looking for with this question. So we'll go for the next one, which is for Sophie. Sophie, can you give us some ideas to actually perform genuine recognition while working from home, which doesn't feel too planned? Jose is asking that question. Oh, we cannot hear you, Sophie. I think you're mute. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, great now.
Is it now looping? Because I saw that in the comments it was saying that it was making a strange sound. You can
But
hear me,
I
okay?
think, yeah, if you only speak, you'll be fine.
Okay. So I'm really looking at maybe examples that we put into place. I think this was something that we were really having to work on in the moment. So if you're meaning on planning on that sense, it was really adapting to how we can react to our employees and what they want. And again, it was really, really looking at what recognition really meant for them. And again, I'm still a huge fan of being a cheerleader of these guys that do a really great job, and they should be celebrated, and we should look at this as well. But more on a genuine perspective, I think what was really nice that we started planning was, within internal communications and within internal newsletters, we would have these interviews with, a colleague from each department. So each time they would have this highlight, actually, who is this person? Who are they? Really highlighting what they do in their day-to-day, sharing that. And, it doesn't come down to whether they did a big sale or not. It's actually how are they contributing to the company. And actually, it's giving them, hey, look at me, this is my show. Not a big spotlight, but it's just sharing who they are and what they contribute. And I think it's that. It's when an employee feels like what their mission, what they're doing and uniquely is contributing to the wider goal. In a really fun, genuine, human way. I think this was definitely a winner for us. And that, we were writing like, oh, I want to go next, or I want to share this, or we even saw employees connecting more, especially when we were discussing a bit more of, who am I? This really nice sharing community opportunity. And I believe, well, we could list so many, right? I mean, what we have internally, with our different tools as well. I mean, we do praise a lot, and this peer-to-peer recognition as well. We use a lot with Nailed, and sending the claps. We really do encourage our team members to, even write down in the week, this happened, and I'm going to send that message to my colleague, whether it's anonymous or not. It's really great to feel that. And this is something I kind of discussed about in the podcast before, which was, not just looking at recognition and giving it. It's also that part of, the feeling of gratitude. And when you're giving that recognition, really do it meaningfully, because it's an all around, it just comes all back around, right? And really encouraging and our team members to give that gratitude as well and give thanks. I think that otherwise the team wouldn't work, right? I mean, that's a really big important part.
Great. Thank you so much for your answer, Sophie. Can you now mute yourself, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. Great. So the next question is for Perry. So what is the best way to convince upper management of the benefits of measures taken to improve recognition, knowing that it is extremely hard or impossible to show their impact on the bottom line? This is a question from Nassim.
Nassim, that's a great question. I think leaders are used to scorecards and dashboards and metrics, okay? But I think recognition is all of that and a lot more. So I think we start to bring in and have our leaders understand that there are different forms of value. So the value can be how together we are. The value can be how strongly we advocate the organization for recruitment. The value can be in all sorts of ways. So I think we need to, have our leaders understand the richness of value in order to tag recognition activity to it. Because then what it does is it validates how much we do that sort of thing and what difference it makes. It may seem like it's incidental to, just support yourselves as a team and have peer-to-peer recognition. But if that team consistently outperforms on the metric side of things and has really high engagement scores, low attrition, and all sorts of other human value elements, you can make that correlation, I think. You can say, because this team celebrates, this team is more inclined to win together. This team wins more for us in all sorts of ways. So I think that's what we do. I think we make a richer sense of what value really is, and we just go beyond the numbers. If we fix on numbers, recognition, we're always chasing just the financial bit of it, and it's so much more than that. So I think as a leadership team, they ought to probably recognize that it is not just as simple as a spreadsheet or a dashboard. It is narrative, and all of those things can help you feel that the company is performing well and will flourish. Hope that helps.
Absolutely agree on what you said, Perry. So we've got a last question to Sophie from Nassim as well. So how do you make sure recognition measures don't hinder the concentration and workflow of employees?
It's taken me quite a while to click unmute, actually. I think first of all, if we're looking at this and we're looking at concentration and workflow, is it something that you're looking at? I can't imagine recognition in, when you're looking at it as acknowledging our employees to be anything negative on that side. I don't think it would hinder it. What could happen is, of course, I believe you mentioned this, Perry, is that culture of competition that can be created, which, yes, can have a really big effect on employee experience, peer-to-peer experience as well. It can create not a great environment, whereas they're not there for the common goal. They're there to, I want to get that KPI, I want to reach that bonus. And of course, we need to understand as well, different departments, different personalities, different profiles, that this kind of recognition, we need to adapt as well. And this is what I really wanted to get at when I was speaking about, really asking what recognition means to each one. So yes, I do think that certain, recognition measures can have negative effect in this culture of competition, yes. But I think healthy competition is always good. I think it's always great to have a little bit in there to get people motivated. But it's always, again, it's looking at how your company works and how those inside your company and your employees inside your company relate to that as well. It's really understanding what they're looking for and moving forward with them. Create it with them. Create a recognition system that is aligned with your employees, what they want, what motivates them, and what will push them forward. Not putting something in place because, you see it online, It's really adapting to your company culture in that sense overall.
Thank you so much, Sophie. Can you now mute yourself, please? Thank you. Thank you. So I don't think we have more time for more questions because it's already 5 o'clock. So once again, thank you to our great speakers, Enrique, who had to leave before the Q&A slot, Perry and Sophie. Thank you so much for collaborating with us in this webinar on employee recognition remote work. I hope it has been as enriching and valuable for you as it has been for us. And to the audience, thank you for joining us today. We'll keep you posted on upcoming webinars and events. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Namsid.
Thank you.